Supernatural faith, family, and the ghosts we carry. The map of this story is a 2-lane highway at night. Dash lights low, classic rock on the radio, thermos coffee going lukewarm between mile markers. Out there, the prairie turns to forest, the forest to corn, and in the long black run between towns you see your reflection in the windshield, a stranger becoming someone familiar. That's where supernatural really lives, not only in salt lines and Latin, but in the quiet space between hunts where two brothers keep each other awake with bad jokes and worse memories. Driving toward a thing they can't quite name and won't admit they fear, people think it's a monster show. And it is werewolves with tragic eyes, ghosts clinging to rooms like mildew, crossroads demons who bargain in honeyed voices. But the monsters are the surface. Underneath, a road novel, an unending elegy, a meditation on grief that puts on flannel so it can lift heavy boxes. The Winchester family business, saving people, hunting things, sounds like a slogan you can stitch on a jacket. In practice, it's a vow with splinters. It's what you say when you're too tired to say we don't know how to live without loss, so we keep driving through it. The origin myth is simple as a nursery rhyme and twice as cruel. A nursery burns. A mother dies on a ceiling, a father breaks on the floor, and a baby screams while an older brother is told to run. That's the first hunt, the first order: take your brother outside and don't look back. From there, the world narrows: motel carpets, gun oil, Latin prayers, the Impala's trunk like a priest's sacristy. Dean grows up fast, all swagger and borrowed bravado, the boy who calls pain a joke before it can call him one. Sam grows up clever and restless, the boy who wants a lock on the bedroom door and a map out of town. One wants escape, one wants home. The tragedy is that their home is a moving target, and their escape is to come back to it. I love the early hunts precisely because they're blue-collar myth. Walmart holy water. Rock salt bought by the pallet. Lore not as arcane scholarship, but as a practical trade. If it bleeds, we can research it. An EMF meter picked up at Radio Shack. Latin memorized the way cooks memorize recipes. The show insists that knowledge is survival folk knowledge, urban legends, the stuff your grandmother warned you about when she said don't whistle after dark. It's Americana as archive, county fairs, truck stops, flaking paint on amusement park horses, a river with too many names and one restless ghost. But the magic trick of supernatural is that the creatures are always also metaphors. A shapeshifter is the fear you have that the person you love is somebody else when the door closes. A haunting is grief refusing to finish its sentence. A demon possession is addiction that talks in the voices of people you're trying to forgive. Even the salt and burn ritual, the show's most pragmatic rite, reads like therapy done with a shovel. Dig up the old story, air it, set it to rest. It doesn't always work. Sometimes the bones are already ash, and still the house moans at night. But trying matters. This is a universe where effort doesn't guarantee salvation, and yet effort is the only sacrament you can keep. Dean plays the older brother, like a role he inherited with the car title. He jokes because he's a dam. Break the joke, and the flood comes. Guilt for what he couldn't stop, vows he can't keep, the sour knowledge that protection becomes control if you hold it too tightly. Sam is a scholar of exits, law school brochures, the fantasy of a kitchen table where no one hides a flask. His rebellion isn't against family, it's against inevitability. He wants to prove that the open road can lead to a place that isn't just another motel. The show loves him for wanting that and punishes him for it, which is another way of saying the show is honest about how families work. Every long-running story needs a liturgy. Supernatural has several no chick flick moments, said with a sideways grin that fools no one. The ritual of loading rock salt. The cassette click as Kansas sings Carry On Wayward Son, and suddenly, somehow, the season becomes a memory you're having in real time. The Impala is more than a car. She's a reliquary. Tools in the trunk like relics, army man jammed into an air vent, Legos ground into carpet, a life's worth of arguments held inside a steel shell. Dean's knuckles on the steering wheel are a creed. Sam asleep against the window is proof that rest is possible if someone else is watching the road. The case of the weak structure gives the show a heartbeat. Strange headline town with one decent diner. Questioning in borrowed suits night stakeout where the brothers eat drive-through and confess more than they meant to. But in the fifth or sixth confession you realize the real case is constant, how to carry the dead without becoming them. Bobby enters like a corrective gruff, book-lined, capable of love that looks like tough advice and warm pie. He teaches them a second liturgy. Family don't end with blood. The found family expands Ellen behind a bar that doubles as an armory. Joe with a hunter's stubborn heart. Later, Castiel falling out of heaven like a question mark with wings. The world grows, but it always folds back to two silhouettes on asphalt. One of the show's braver choices arrives when it lets the universe scale up. Angels aren't delicate. They're bureaucrats with nukes. Heaven is not a harp section. It's management culture with apocalyptic KPIs. Hell is industrial. The apocalypse isn't a thunderclap, it's meetings, memos, and foregone conclusions. And suddenly destiny is just another word for a contract you never signed. Castiel's entrance reframes the thesis: even the divine can be wrong, especially when it forgets why rules were written. Free will becomes the only effective weapon, and it looks like stubbornness wearing a trench coat. The brothers are drafted into prophecy. They refuse it because refusing is the only way to keep the word brother from becoming pawn. This refusal is the spine of their ethic, a plain-spoken existentialism. If a thing tries to tell you what you are, test it. If a voice says inevitable, ask for its footnotes. If the cosmos writes your names in a margin, drive off the margin. Of course, the cost is high. Defying scripts means writing your own, and writing your own means taking responsibility for the edits. The show lets them fail and keeps them lovable anyway. That's rarer than it sounds. Humor is Supernatural's other armor. A cursed rabbit's foot turns a gun into slapstick. A trickster forces the Winchesters through parodies of television itself, surgical soap opera, police procedural, Japanese game show, and in that carnival mirror we see exactly what the series is saying about narrative. Genres are cages if you let them be. The meta episodes aren't just clever. They're philosophical. They insist that stories are choices, not handcuffs. The French Mistake, with its head-spinning jump into a universe where the Winchesters are actors named after their real actors, breaks the terrarium and shows the glass. It shouldn't work. It does because the heart never gets lost even when the frame changes. There's an American romance running under everything. The diner where the coffee is bad but bottomless. The county sheriff who's seen too much and still shows up. The way small towns hold grudges in the same drawer as casseroles. The series uses that romance carefully. Sometimes the town saves the brothers. Sometimes the town is the monster. Either way, the landscape matters. These are not anonymous places. They are haunted zip codes. Ball fields after dark, motels themed within an inch of their lives. The fluorescent buzz of a laundromat at 2 a.m. if you've ever lived in transit. You can smell these scenes. People talk about masculinity in this show like it's only stoicism and guns. Watch again. Vulnerability is the central skill set. Dean cooks because someone has to. Sam researches because knowing is kinder than guessing. They apologize, badly, then better. They cry in cars because cars are the only rooms they trust. The joke no chick flick moments is a permission slip to have them anyway. The real bravado is softening. Open the cooler, pass the beer, say the thing you're trying to swallow. The lesson repeats. Monsters are terrifying. Silence is deadlier. Does the show repeat itself? Of course. So do obsessions, liturgies, griefs. The repetition is thematic, a ritual return to the idea that love is maintenance, not miracle. Every hunt is practice for the one hunt that never ends, keeping each other here. When they fail, they do what the living do: bargain, break rules, pay later. Crossroads deals dramatize that bad arithmetic. 10 years now for a bill you can't afford later. Someone always offers a shortcut. Someone always thinks they can out-argue the consequence. The series isn't naive. It knows that bargains feel like love when you're scared. It knows that love without boundaries becomes a curse. It lets the brothers learn it slowly, painfully, like most of us do. If faith is part of the subtitle, it's not only church faith. It's the faith that tomorrow you'll still recognize the person across from you. That the engine will turn over. That the plan you made at AM will still make sense at noon. It's faith in the ordinary rituals, salt line across a motel threshold. The click whir of a tape going in. A prayer said not to be heard but to steady hands. The show's theology, when you boil it down, is ethical. Choose the person in front of you. Destinies will argue. Prophecies will posture. Look at your brother. Pick him first. As the seasons gather and the mythology braids denser, the core refuses to change. That's why it holds. New allies arrive, hunters tough and tender. Angels who unlearn obedience. Devils who tell the truth because it hurts. Even death, a patient gentleman who prefers good pizza. Cosmic stakes rise. The camera still respects a diner booth more than a throne. When the world ends again, the question remains intact. When the doors lock and the lights cut, who do you call, and what does it cost you to keep calling? I think often about the way the show treats home. They don't get one in the conventional sense. They build one out of motion and memory. The trunk, the tapes, the in-jokes, the scars catalogued like postcards. Home becomes a practice, not a place. You can carry it, or you can drop it when it's too heavy, then circle back and pick it up again. That's what the long drive sequences teach. Rest is a moving target. You learn to rest while moving, which is to say you learn to trust. So let this first leg of the drive end where it began, on the highway. Night shouldered close, the sky a drumhead for an old song that somehow never ages. In the glass of the windshield, all those ghosts we carry ride with us, mother in a flame that doesn't go out, father in a shadow that sometimes protects, friends who became family and family who became legend. The Winchesters aren't heroes because they win. They're heroes because they keep repairing what breaks. Sometimes that's a warding sigil. Sometimes it's a promise. Either way, it's work. And work, done together, is how you outlast the dark, even when the dark is part of you. If you stay on the road long enough, you start to realize the highway is a timeline. Every exit leads to a ghost. You pull into some half-lit gas station, and the air smells like déjà vu. A song on the radio, the hum of the pump, the neon buzz, it all reminds you that you've been here before, even if you haven't. That's how supernatural feels after a while. It's not a story that moves forward. It circles, like memory. Every hunt echoes another. Every monster carries a piece of the boys themselves. Every goodbye sounds familiar because loss, once learned, becomes a language you keep speaking. The show doesn't hide this repetition, it embraces it. The brothers bury each other again and again, and each time they mean it, and each time they fail to let it stay true. They die like punctuation. Commas, semicolons, never the final period. It's almost funny, until it isn't. Because what they're really resurrecting each time isn't life. It's duty. We'll find a way, Dean says. We always do. It sounds brave until you realize it's also a curse. The way they refuse to let death stand still says as much about love as it does about fear. Dean's deal with the Crossroads demon in season 2 is one of those moments that defines the entire series. He trades his soul for Sam's life, and suddenly we understand that love, in this world, is the most dangerous kind of faith. The kind that believes sacrifice will rewrite the rules of nature. The kind that turns devotion into self-destruction. And what's haunting is that the show doesn't condemn him for it. It just watches. It shows the quiet consequences: Sam's guilt, Dean's nightmares, the slow erosion of self when you realize you can't save everyone but try anyway. There's something profoundly American about this, the myth of the self-sacrificing protector. The big brother who carries the weight of an entire family on his shoulders, even when his knees are shaking. But Collins, no, not Collins. Kripke and later the writers make sure we see the toll. Dean isn't a martyr. He's a man exhausted by loyalty. Every resurrection costs him something invisible. His laughter becomes armor. His flirting, deflection. His faith, conditional. When angels finally enter the story, Dean treats them the way most of us treat hope, with sarcasm, because it's safer than belief. Sam, on the other hand, believes too much. That's his flaw and his gift. He believes in redemption, in logic, in the idea that evil can be cured if only he studies hard enough. It's why demons tempt him with knowledge, not power. Knowledge, for Sam, is both salvation and sin. he reads until he drowns. His addiction to purpose demon blood, prophecies, meaning mirrors Dean's addiction to guilt. The two complete each other in the way only opposites shaped by the same trauma can. They are both wrong and both right, and that tension keeps the engine running, season after season. Supernatural becomes less about the monsters outside and more about the monsters within. Lucifer isn't frightening because he's Satan. He's frightening because he sounds like your worst thought and the thought that says, "You were made for this, you can't stop, you'll never be free." And when Sam becomes Lucifer's vessel, it isn't possession, it's metaphor. He becomes what he fears most, a man defined by destiny instead of choice. The same fate Dean resists becomes the one Sam accepts, and for a moment, both are right. The show's moral brilliance lies in its refusal to offer easy answers. Sometimes faith means surrender. Sometimes it means rebellion. You only know which when it's too late. Castiel's arrival as the trench-coated, gravel-voiced angel changes the chemistry of everything. He's not there to save. He's there to question. His first act pulling Dean from hell is less rescue and more recruitment. Heaven needs soldiers, not souls. But Cass learns, slowly and painfully, that faith without doubt is tyranny. Watching him unlearn obedience is one of the most moving arcs in television. He begins as a soldier who believes orders are holy and ends as a friend who understands that love is holier than law. When he tells Dean, "I rebelled for you," it isn't romance, it's theology rewritten in human language. The Apocalypse arc seasons 4 and 5 is the series at its most operatic. Angels and demons, seals and prophecies, Lucifer and Michael circling like weather systems. But what grounds it is the brothers' refusal to play their assigned roles. Heaven says Dean is Michael's vessel. Hell says Sam is Lucifer's. Destiny writes their tragedy in advance. They tear up the script. That's what makes the finale of season 5 so devastatingly perfect. Sam, choosing to trap himself with Lucifer in the cage, refuses to let prophecy dictate love. Dean, refusing to undo it, honors that choice even though it kills him. Free will wins, but only by breaking hearts. It's rare to see a show that understands that love and freedom are often opposites. Love binds, freedom releases. The miracle is finding balance, and Supernatural shows how messy that balance is. For every hug, there's an argument. For every reunion, another loss. The rhythm is cyclical because grief is cyclical. You think you've buried it, but it keeps showing up at the next hunt, the next town. The next mirror, when the apocalypse resets, because of course it resets, the world looks the same. But the boys are older, quieter, more tired. The motel rooms get smaller. The jokes shorter. They start questioning the cost of endless war. The show does too. It begins to ask whether the fight is still noble or just habit. Hunters become metaphors for anyone who's made a calling out of coping. Saving others while avoiding yourself. Fixing the world while letting your own house crumble. There's nobility in it, but also tragedy, and yet, the humor persists. That's what keeps it human. Dean's love for pie becomes a kind of philosophy: find sweetness where you can, because the darkness never ends. Sam's exasperation becomes a rhythm of care. Someone has to worry. The Monster of the Week episodes remain small sanctuaries, little reminders that absurdity and horror share the same bed. One week you're hunting a cursed teddy bear. The next, you're talking to death over Chicago deep dish. It's the tonal whiplash that makes the emotional truth sharper. Life, after all, doesn't arrange itself by genre. As the mythology thickens, the show becomes a conversation with itself. It starts to wonder what happens when heroes outlive their legend. When saving the world becomes routine. When you've fought God and won, what's left to fight? The later seasons answer softly, each other. The ghosts they carry aren't demons anymore, they're memories, regrets, versions of themselves that died along the way. And somehow, those are harder to kill. The genius of Supernatural's long run is that it transforms its own repetition into ritual. The Winchester brothers' endless cycle of death and return becomes its theology. Death isn't failure, it's maintenance. You die, you come back. You fix the car, you keep driving. You talk about what you'll eat, who you'll save next, which motel has decent coffee. The small things matter because they're what tether you to the living. Even angels envy that the mundanity of choice. The beauty of persistence. By the time the show begins exploring heaven and hell as bureaucracies rather than myths, it's telling us something profound about modern spirituality. Systems, even celestial ones, are flawed because they're made by beings who fear chaos more than cruelty. Heaven imprisons souls in happy loops, hell runs on endless paperwork, and humanity messy, contradictory, rebellious humanity is the only thing that still surprises the universe. When God finally appears, he's a writer who's grown bored of his own story. That's the show's most cutting joke. Creation itself can get lazy. But faith is what mortals invent to keep the story going anyway. There's a moment, quiet, unflashy, that captures all of this. Dean sits on the hood of the Impala at dawn, watching the sky turn gold. Sam is asleep in the passenger seat, mouth open, a man finally resting after too many nights. No monsters. No music. Just breathing. It lasts maybe 20 seconds of screen time. But it says everything. This is what they've been chasing, not victory, not redemption, just peace long enough to remember what peace feels like, and maybe that's why Supernatural lasts. It's a show about faith, but not the kind with hymns. It's faith in motion, in maintenance, in the act of trying again. Faith that the person beside you is worth the fight, even when you're too tired to fight for yourself. Faith that the engine will start, that there's still work to do, and that maybe, just maybe, this time you'll get it right. That faith, however fragile, is what keeps the lights on in the bunker and the wheels turning on the road. Because as the series reminds us again and again, it's not the monsters that win in the end, it's the apathy, the giving up. And for all their flaws, for all their curses and deals and arguments, the Winchesters never give up. That's their real superpower. There comes a point when every hunter gets tired, not the kind of tired that a night's sleep can cure, but the kind that seeps into the soul. For Sam and Dean, it happens somewhere between saving the world and realizing the world doesn't remember being saved. Cities go on. People fall in love, fight, watch TV, pay bills. Life continues as if the apocalypse never happened. Maybe that's what saving the world really means, not changing it, but allowing it to forget. In those later seasons, you start to feel the weight of years pressing down on the brothers. They've become legends without meaning to. Monsters know their names, angels whisper their deeds, even death itself greets them like an old acquaintance. And yet, they're still doing laundry, still arguing about music, still patching the car together with the same stubborn hope. That's the paradox of Supernatural. It's cosmic and domestic at the same time. The fate of the universe depends on whether someone remembered to buy pie. What fascinates me most is how the show handles aging. You can see it in their faces, in the way Dean's jokes slow down, in the way Sam listens more than he lectures. They've lived so long in a world that doesn't allow growing old, that every wrinkle feels like rebellion. In fiction, heroes rarely age, they either die gloriously or stay frozen in time. But Supernatural lets its heroes wear their years like armor. The lines around their eyes aren't signs of decline. They're evidence of endurance. There's a quiet bravery in that. It's one thing to die young with purpose. It's another to keep living when the purpose keeps shifting. The Winchesters keep showing up, not because they expect reward, but because showing up is what they do. That's their faith. It's the faith of mechanics, not monks, the belief that if you keep fixing what's broken, eventually something will hold. The bunker, introduced midway through the series, becomes their monastery. Hidden underground, lined with books and whiskey, it's the first real home they've ever had. For a while, you almost believe they've earned peace. They have a kitchen, bedrooms, a library full of lore they don't have to steal. But even safety feels strange to men raised on rest stops and gunfire. The bunker hums with ghosts of its own, the silence too loud, the lights too steady. For Dean, it's a cage disguised as comfort. For Sam, it's a second chance to build a life. The tension between them remains eternal. One can't stop moving, the other can't stop hoping. God finally steps onto the stage, and what a strange thing that is. You expect awe, maybe judgment, but what you get is disappointment. God Chuck is a writer bored of his own creation. He watches the brothers struggle and calls it entertainment. Story needs drama, he says, and suddenly faith itself becomes manipulation. The Winchesters realize they're not heroes, they're characters in someone else's script. It's the ultimate blasphemy to learn that your suffering was plotted for someone's amusement, and yet, instead of despair, they rebel. Again, that's their language. They fight God with the same tools they used on demons: grit, love, defiance. When Dean says, "We're not just some story," it's not only defiance against Chuck, it's defiance against fatalism itself. It's the moment supernatural becomes meta in the truest sense. It looks straight at its audience and asks, "Are you content to be written, or will you write yourself?" Chuck's downfall is poetic justice. The author loses control of his characters and they take the pen from him. It's a metaphor for liberation on every level: religious, creative, emotional. Free will in this universe is not a gift from God. It's an act of rebellion against Him. But what happens after you've defied the universe? After you've beaten death, angels, and God Himself? What's left to fight for? The later episodes answer with surprising humility. Life. Just life. The small, stubborn act of continuing. Feeding the dog. Fixing the car. Making coffee for the one person who still sits across from you. After years of apocalypse, domesticity becomes sacred. That's why the quieter moments hit hardest. Sam teaching a kid to read Latin. Dean repairing a jukebox. Castiel sitting in silence, understanding too late that love isn't weakness. There's no grand speech, no golden light, just ordinary tenderness in a world that tried to burn it out. The show's relationship with faith deepens here. It stops asking, "Does God exist?" and starts asking, "If He does, what now?" The faith that remains isn't in heaven or destiny, it's in each other. It's in the way Dean pulls Sam out of despair for the 1000th time. It's in the way Sam refuses to give up on anyone, even when logic says he should. It's in the way Castiel finally says the words he's carried for years, "I love you," and means them without expecting anything in return. That confession, for many fans, felt like a storm breaking. But what makes it powerful isn't romance, it's honesty. For a show built on repression, that moment is revelation. It says that vulnerability is the real miracle, not resurrection. It's not the explosions or exorcisms that redeem these characters, it's the quiet truth spoken aloud after years of silence. And then, of course, the road narrows again. It always does. One last hunt. One more ghost. Dean's death, simple, uncinematic, almost mundane, arrives like a sigh. He dies doing what he's always done, saving someone, bleeding in a barn that looks like every barn before it. There's no grand prophecy, no bright light, no cosmic reward, just the inevitability of time catching up. And somehow, that's perfect, because after 15 seasons of defying death, the only fitting end is to let it stand. The tragedy isn't that Dean dies, it's that he finally gets to rest. And in that rest, there's grace. Sam lives on, and life slows down to human speed. We watch him age, see the lines deepen, the hair gray. We see the photos of his family, the echo of laughter in a house that was once unimaginable for him. For a man who spent his life in motel rooms, permanence becomes redemption. His peace is not divine. It's ordinary. That's what makes it holy. When he finally joins his brother in that eternal stretch of highway, it feels less like death and more like returning home. The Impala gleams. Kansas plays. Dean leans on the car, grinning. And for a moment, eternity looks like a 2-lane road under a golden sky. What stays with me long after isn't the monsters or the miracles, it's the music. Those guitar chords at the end, that bittersweet harmony of relief and sadness. "Carry On Wayward Son" isn't just a theme song. It's a benediction. A promise that rest is earned, not given. That even the weary can find grace if they keep walking toward it. In the end, supernatural isn't about heaven or hell, it's about the in-between. The stretch of road where love and loss coexist, where humor softens grief, where duty becomes devotion. It's a story that begins with revenge and ends with forgiveness, because that's what every ghost story is trying to teach us. You can't move on until you let go, but the show doesn't preach. It drives. It hums. It lets you feel the wheel vibrate under your hand, the hum of the tires on cracked asphalt, the flicker of motel signs in the dark. It invites you into motion, not perfection. Because faith, in the Winchester sense, is never still. It's a verb, and maybe that's why, even after all these years, the story still feels alive. Because somewhere, out there, on some stretch of highway you've never driven, there's still an Impala roaring against the night. Two brothers laughing too loudly. Classic rock on the radio. The ghosts still ride along, but they don't drive anymore. And that, finally, is peace. Good and evil are such old words. Too heavy, too polished. In Supernatural, they rust. They chip. They bend. The show never asks who's good or bad, it asks what you're willing to do for love, and whether that love will still recognize you when you're done. Every monster, every ghost, every demon is just a human story told too loudly, a version of ourselves that forgot where the line was. That's what makes the series so quietly moral. It knows there are no pure heroes, only people who keep trying. When you hunt monsters long enough, you start to see the pattern. They're not strangers. They're mirrors. A vampire who refuses to kill and starves himself addiction. A ghost who can't move on because her grief has nowhere to go trauma. A witch who curses a town because no one listened loneliness. Even demons, under their smirks, sound human when they talk about the pain that made them. Hell isn't another realm. It's a metaphor for what happens when suffering stops being shared and starts festering alone. The Winchesters fight these things not because they're saints, but because they understand them too well. That's the haunting irony. They save people from the monsters outside while wrestling the monsters inside. Every exorcism is a confession. Every salt circle is a boundary they wish they could draw around their own hearts. Sometimes I think the Latin doesn't matter. It's the act of speaking, of naming what torments you, that gives it less power. Morality in this universe isn't about purity. It's about mercy. Dean learns this the hard way. He's spent so much of his life judging evil by how close it looks to his own reflection. He hates what he sees in monsters because they make him recognize the violence he's capable of. Sam, meanwhile, tries to rationalize it all to separate the supernatural from the human. But the longer they fight, the blurrier that line becomes. When you start saving monsters and killing men, you realize morality isn't a checklist, it's a compass that keeps spinning while you walk. And still, they keep walking. Because what else is there? They don't have the luxury of cynicism. Hunters can't afford to believe the world is hopeless. Hope is their ammunition. Without it, every gun jams. Castiel embodies this moral exhaustion perfectly. He's an angel who believes in heaven's mission until he sees how cruelly heaven enforces it. When he falls literally and figuratively, it's not because he disobeys, but because he finally understands compassion. Obedience, he learns, is easy. Empathy is harder. Loving humanity means making mistakes for its sake. His journey from celestial soldier to flawed friend mirrors the entire show's theology. Salvation isn't earned through perfection, but through choice. In one of the series' most brilliant ironies, Lucifer, the devil himself, often tells the truth. His cruelty is blunt honesty. He tells Sam, God left because you bored him. He tells humanity, you were built to destroy yourselves, and sometimes, he's not wrong. That's what makes him terrifying. He speaks the truth without love. Supernatural teaches us that truth without love is just another weapon. Dean lies constantly, but often to protect. Sam tells the truth, but sometimes to wound. The show doesn't moralize either choice, it just shows the cost. Every truth, every lie, leaves a scar. The monsters in Supernatural change, evolve, get redefined. Vampires become sympathetic. Werewolves fall in love. Even demons show regret. But humans? Humans stay complicated. The real evil is rarely supernatural, it's human cruelty, human apathy. The father who hurts his children. The town that turns away. The bureaucrat who signs the wrong order. These are the terrors that never die because they don't have bodies to burn. There's a strange kind of comfort in that honesty. The show refuses the easy comfort of purity. It insists that we're all capable of darkness, which means we're also capable of redemption. Every time the Winchesters choose to save someone instead of killing them, it's a small act of rebellion against despair. Every mercy is a refusal to believe the world is already lost. Faith, in this story, is an action, not an idea. It's not about praying for miracles, it's about driving into the dark and trusting you'll find something worth saving when you get there. When Dean kneels by a dying friend, when Sam gives a monster a second chance, when Castiel falls again and again just to keep loving its faith. Not the shining, unshakable kind. The kind that trembles but doesn't stop. It's easy to forget that the show was made in a world that often glorifies cynicism. Everything is ironic, detached, clever. But Supernatural stays embarrassingly sincere. It believes in love that endures. It believes in sacrifice. It believes in crying in the front seat of a Chevy and still getting up to face the next day. That sincerity is what makes it timeless. You can mock it, sure, but the reason people watched for 15 years isn't irony, it's recognition. We all want to believe our pain can still lead somewhere. Some of the most powerful episodes are the smallest ones. A kid haunted by his father's ghost. A town cursed by its own guilt. A reaper tired of the paperwork. They remind you that morality is local. That the world isn't saved in apocalypses, it's saved one small kindness at a time. The grand mythology, the angels, demons, the endless heavens is beautiful, but it's the motel rooms that make it human. The moments between hunts where someone makes coffee, or stitches a wound, or says I'm sorry without looking up. The show's humor plays a moral role too. Laughing doesn't trivialize the pain, it survives it. Dean's bed jokes, the running gags, the absurd cases, they're not distractions. They're declarations of life. You can't kill me, the laughter says. Because I still find this funny. It's gallows humor as philosophy. When you can laugh at the dark, it loses its monopoly on meaning. That's the real theology of Supernatural. Not heaven, not hell, but resilience. The refusal to let despair be the last word. Even death itself patient, weary death respects that. When he tells Dean, you reap what you sow, there's no malice in it. It's the closest thing to divine order this world ever gets. Actions have weight. Choices echo. But endings aren't punishment, they're punctuation. I keep thinking about one line. One of those small ones that gets lost among the exorcisms and the gunfire. You can't save everyone, someone tells Dean. And he answers, maybe not. But we save the ones we can. That's it. That's the creed. No prophecy, no divine command, no eternal law, just the stubborn grace of trying anyway. That's morality stripped bare. It's what makes this series so quietly revolutionary. It tells us that goodness isn't about winning. It's about refusing to stop even when you've already lost. Every religion preaches some version of salvation. Supernatural proposes maintenance instead. Keep fixing what breaks. Keep forgiving what hurts. Keep choosing even when it doesn't matter. The brothers are mechanics of the human condition, repairing others as a way to avoid falling apart themselves. The older the car, the louder it rattles, but it keeps running because they keep trying, and maybe that's the point. Good and evil are too grand, too cinematic. But mercy is personal. It happens in the small hours, when no one's watching, when you choose to see the monster as a person and the person as someone worth saving. Mercy doesn't erase the darkness. It lights a candle in it. And that candle, flickering, stubborn, ridiculous in its smallness, that's the heart of Supernatural. Brotherhood is not about blood. It's about burden. It's about who you choose to carry when the road gets long, and who chooses to carry you when you can't take another step. In Supernatural, brotherhood isn't a metaphor, it's the plot, the faith, the curse, and the cure all at once. Dean and Sam don't just save the world. They save each other, over and over, until saving becomes indistinguishable from living. The word family appears so often in the show that it stops sounding like comfort and starts sounding like gravity. Family don't end with blood, Bobby says, and it becomes scripture. But gravity, even when it keeps you grounded, also keeps you from flying. That's the paradox of love in Supernatural. It saves you, yes, but it also traps you. Dean can't let go. Sam can't stay gone. The world keeps ending, and they keep finding ways to resurrect it, because letting go would mean admitting that some love stories are meant to end. There's something holy about the way they argue. Their fights aren't just about monsters. They're about meaning. Dean wants to protect what's left. Sam wants to understand what's beyond. It's the eternal struggle between preservation and progress, between holding on and letting go. Every fight between them is a theological debate disguised as family drama. And every reconciliation is a small miracle grace, in the form of an apology muttered through gritted teeth. The brilliance of Supernatural lies in how it refuses to romanticize this dynamic. It loves them, but it doesn't lie about them. Their love isn't pure, it's possessive, desperate, codependent, and utterly human. When Dean sells his soul for Sam, it's not selflessness. It's terror of being alone. When Sam hides his secrets, it's not rebellion. It's the instinct to grow without permission. Every act of love leaves a scar. Every reunion carries the echo of 1,000 deaths. And yet, the show doesn't judge them. It lets them be messy, contradictory, real. Because love, when you strip away the myths, is exactly that. A glorious disaster that teaches us who we are when everything else burns. There's a reason the show always returns to the car. The Impala isn't just transportation, it's a confessional. Every argument, every forgiveness, every silence worth keeping happens inside that car. It's church without pews, therapy without chairs, home without walls. When Dean drives, he's in control. When Sam rides shotgun, he's learning to trust. The seats have absorbed every tear, every laugh, every promise half kept. If you listen closely, you can hear the echoes of every version of them that's ever existed. It's no accident that their heaven, their final rest, is a road. Roads are motion and connection, the two constants of their lives. The idea that paradise could be still would never fit them. For the Winchesters, peace is movement without fear, love without loss. Eternity not as perfection, but as a drive without destination. It's the purest metaphor for freedom I've ever seen. Endless motion, no more running. But to reach that peace, they had to learn one final lesson, the hardest one. That sometimes saving someone means letting them go. Dean's death isn't just his end. It's Sam's initiation into acceptance. For the first time, Sam doesn't bargain, doesn't beg, doesn't bleed himself dry to fix the unfixable. He lets his brother rest. It's mercy in its purest form. The act of saying, "You've done enough, you can stop now." It's a line most of us will say someday, to someone we love or to ourselves. And that's what makes Supernatural more than just a story, it's a rehearsal for grief. It teaches us that love is not about holding tighter. It's about holding until it's time to let go. Still, the ghosts never leave entirely. They never do. Dean's voice stays in Sam's head the way love always does, not haunting, but guiding. In those quiet years after, when Sam raises his son, you can feel the echo of that bond. He names the boy Dean. Of course he does. The cycle continues, not as a curse, but as remembrance. Love repeats, but softer this time. That's what healing looks like in the world of Supernatural. It's not clean or linear. It's circular, like the highway. You come back to the same place, but you see it differently. You drive the same route, but now you notice the light through the trees, the songs you used to skip. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about making peace with the version of yourself who couldn't. What's remarkable is how Supernatural never lets sentimentality erase honesty. It shows the cost of devotion. It shows that love can rot as easily as it can heal. When you fight for someone long enough, you can start fighting against them without noticing. And yet, it insists that the fight is still worth it. Not because it's noble, but because it's human. Love, the show reminds us, is not the absence of pain. It's the decision to face pain together. That's what makes it so sacred. It's why even angels fall for it, why demons fear it, why death respects it. Love breaks every law in this universe, but it's the only law that makes sense. There's a scene, small, quiet, easy to miss, where Dean tells Sam, "I'm proud of us." No monsters, no apocalypse, no background music. Just two men who have finally stopped trying to be something more than human. That line, so simple, carries the weight of 15 years. It's the series' truest prayer. Pride, not for victory, but for survival, for showing up, for keeping each other alive as long as possible. That's the beauty of brotherhood as the show defines it. It's not eternal. It's effort. You don't inherit it. You build it, one act at a time, until it becomes faith. A faith that doesn't need heaven, because it's already found something worth believing in. The ghosts they carry, their parents, their friends, every lost hunter and fallen angel never really leave. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not supposed to be free of our ghosts. Maybe we're supposed to learn how to live with them. How to let them ride quietly in the back seat while we keep driving forward. Sometimes I think that's what grief really is, an ongoing conversation with the people we've lost, the versions of ourselves we've outgrown. The Winchesters keep talking to their ghosts, not because they're trapped, but because love doesn't vanish when the body does. It just changes shape. There's something deeply comforting in that idea that nothing good is ever truly gone, just transformed. Fire becomes light. Memory becomes story. Pain becomes empathy. Even loss, if you sit with it long enough, becomes a kind of wisdom. Supernatural teaches that in every season, every death, every resurrection, the pain never leaves, but neither does the love. You learn to hold both, and somehow that's enough. That's why the series never really ends. It can't. As long as someone remembers, as long as someone keeps singing along to Kansas in a car somewhere, it's still happening. That's how stories like this work. They outlive the people who made them, just like families outlive the people who started them. It's not about the end. It's about the echoes. When I think about Sam and Dean now, I don't see hunters or heroes. I see two men who did the impossible. They learned how to forgive themselves. And maybe that's the hardest exorcism of all, the one where the ghost you're facing is your own reflection, because that's what family really means in Supernatural. Not blood, not destiny, but the slow, patient work of forgiving the people you love for being human and forgiving yourself for being the same. Stories like Supernatural don't really end. They fade into the bloodstream. They linger in phrases we repeat, in songs that suddenly feel sacred, in the way headlights on a night road remind us of everything we've survived. 15 seasons, hundreds of hunts, countless deaths, and yet, what remains is not the monsters, but the meaning. The show leaves us with a question we keep answering in our own lives. How do we keep going when everything asks us to stop? The truth is, we all have our versions of the road. For some, it's literal, a highway stretching through towns we can barely name. For others, it's metaphorical, the long, uneven journey through loss, work, relationships, the small acts of keeping the light on when the dark feels easier. That's what Supernatural captures so perfectly, the quiet heroism of persistence. It doesn't romanticize suffering. It dignifies endurance. When people talk about why the show lasted so long, they usually mention the chemistry, the mythology, the monsters. But what really kept it alive was recognition. Everyone sees themselves in the Winchesters at some point. Maybe you're Dean carrying too much, joking to stay upright, terrified of disappointing the people you die for. Maybe you're Sam searching for meaning, desperate to prove that life is more than what it's handed you. Maybe you're Cass, lost between duty and love, trying to make sense of a world that doesn't play fair. The truth is, we're all of them, in pieces. That's why it hurts to say goodbye. The ending of Supernatural isn't about finality, it's about inheritance. The story passes from them to us. Dean's courage, Sam's faith, Castiel's compassion, even Crowley's reluctant honesty, all of it becomes part of the viewer's moral vocabulary. We watch them fail and forgive themselves, and we start forgiving ourselves too. We see them love badly but sincerely, and we realize that sincerity matters more than perfection. The series hands us its ghosts, one by one, and trusts us to carry them forward. There's something deeply humane in that trust. Most shows end with closure. Supernatural ends with continuity. It tells us that love and loss don't cancel each other out, they coexist. That grief is just love stretched across time. That stories never die as long as someone remembers the sound of the engine starting. The lyrics of that old song, the click of the lighter before the salt and burn. It's strange how a show about death became a guidebook for living. It teaches that strength isn't stoicism, it's tenderness under pressure. That faith isn't certainty, it's curiosity that refuses to quit. That family isn't blood, it's the people who meet you in the dark and say, let's drive until we find light, and maybe that's the secret of its longevity. Supernatural doesn't offer answers, it offers company. It sits beside you in the passenger seat, quiet but present, and reminds you that no one survives alone. That's the gospel according to the Winchesters. You can be broken, scared, angry, and still worth saving. When I rewatch, I notice small things. The way Dean's hand hesitates before he starts the car. The way Sam's eyes soften when he realizes he's home, even if that home is temporary. The way Castiel tilts his head, like he's listening to something divine in the ordinary. These moments, the pauses, the glances, the breaths are where the real theology happens. The show may deal in angels and demons, but its miracles are human. Forgiveness, laughter, endurance, and the courage to begin again. What's beautiful is that it never asks us to be heroes. It only asks us to keep trying. Saving people, hunting things, yes, but also cooking breakfast, holding hands, making jokes after funerals. It's a reminder that goodness doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from choosing kindness when it's inconvenient, from showing up, then when no one notices. When Dean says goodbye, he smiles through tears. He tells Sam to keep going, and that's the entire philosophy distilled into a sentence. Keep going. Not because it's easy, not because it gets better, but because movement itself is meaning. Because every mile, every choice, every tiny mercy adds up to something worth believing in. There's a quiet grace in how supernatural treats mortality. It doesn't deny it, doesn't soften it with fantasy. People die, often painfully, sometimes pointlessly. But the show insists that death is not the opposite of life, it's its completion. That a life lived fully, with love and loyalty and laughter, can end and still echo forever. That the road doesn't stop. It just disappears into the horizon. Maybe that's what heaven really is, not clouds and gates, but memory made eternal. The sound of the Impala's engine, the warmth of the dashboard light, the voice beside you saying, "I got you." Not perfect, not painless, just peaceful. A world where every goodbye becomes "see you later." I think about all the ghosts the show gave us: Mary, John, Bobby, Ellen, Joe, Charlie, Castiel, Jack, and how each one represents a different kind of loss. But they also represent continuity. Each of them leaves something behind: wisdom, laughter, a lesson about how to keep going. Supernatural doesn't erase death, it integrates it. That's why its grief feels honest. It doesn't ask us to move on. It asks us to move with it. In the end, that's the real magic of the show. It's not the exorcisms or the rituals, it's the storytelling itself. The way it builds a mythology out of human emotion, the way it turns trauma into tenderness. Watching it feels like looking into a mirror that forgives you. You see your own fears dressed as monsters, your own love disguised as sacrifice, your own exhaustion echoed in a brother who still cracks jokes in the dark. And when it's over, really over, you realize that the world hasn't changed. You have. You drive the same roads, but now you notice the ghosts differently. They're not warnings anymore. They're reminders. Proof that you've lived, that you've loved, that you've survived things that should have ended you. The ghosts we carry are not curses, there are witnesses. That's the inheritance of supernatural. The understanding that stories don't save us by changing the world. They save us by changing the way we see it. The road, the music, the brotherhood, it all becomes metaphor, but it feels like memory. It feels real because it teaches a truth we keep forgetting, that meaning isn't found at the end of the road, but in the act of traveling it together. So if you ever find yourself alone at night, headlights stretching forward into the dark, remember this: you're not the only one out there. Somewhere, someone else is driving too, humming along to the same song, carrying their own ghosts, keeping their own faith alive. The road is long, but it's shared. The fire still burns. The story goes on, and maybe, in the end, that's all any of us can ask for. Not heaven, not closure, just a road, a song, and someone to drive beside us until the light breaks again.